Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death is a powerful critique of how television and entertainment-driven media have eroded serious discourse in public life. Written in 1985, Postman's insights feel even more relevant today, in an era dominated by social media, viral content, and the 24-hour news cycle. He argues that the form in which information is delivered dictates the way society processes and values that information. Unlike print culture, which encourages depth, rationality, and critical thinking, television prioritizes spectacle, emotion, and instant gratification, fundamentally altering the way we engage with politics, education, and culture. Postman begins by comparing the dystopian visions of George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. While Orwell warned of a totalitarian future where the government controlled people through oppression and censorship, Huxley envisioned a world where people were subdued not by force, but by pleasure. Postman argues that Huxley's vision was the one that came true. Instead of an all-powerful government controlling what we see and hear, we have willingly surrendered ourselves to a media environment that entertains us to the point of passivity. Historically, Postman explains, print culture, books, newspapers, and written debates, encouraged reasoned discourse. In the 18th and 19th centuries, public debates and political speeches were complex, logical, and rooted in evidence. Even in America's early days, figures like Lincoln and Douglas engaged in hours-long debates, and audiences were expected to follow sophisticated arguments. Literacy in reading shaped a society that valued depth, patience, and logic. However, with the rise of the telegraph and then the photograph, the nature of information began to shift. The telegraph allowed for rapid transmission of news, but it fragmented knowledge into short, disconnected bits. Photography, on the other hand, prioritized images over words, shifting emphasis from analysis to appearance. But it was the advent of television that, according to Postman, marked the most drastic shift. Unlike print media, television is a fundamentally visual and entertaining medium. It is designed to capture attention rather than to foster critical thought. News programs rely on sensationalism, dramatic visuals, and emotionally charged stories rather than substantive reporting. Political campaigns have turned into carefully orchestrated spectacles, where a candidate's image and charisma matter more than their policies or ideas. Even presidential debates, once serious forums for discussing governance, have become television events where candidates are judged on their likability and stage presence rather than their arguments. Education has not been spared from this transformation. With the influence of television, traditional methods of teaching have been challenged by the expectation that learning must also be entertaining. Educational programs like Sesame Street may teach children certain facts, but they do so by prioritizing engagement over deep comprehension. The shift towards making learning fun means that students become accustomed to quick, digestible information rather than sustained intellectual effort. This has long-term consequences, as the habit of deep reading and complex problem-solving is being replaced by the expectation of instant gratification. Religion, too, has been reshaped by television. Televangelism, for example, turns religious sermons into performances rather than theological discussions. Instead of deep, introspective spiritual reflection, religious messages are condensed into catchy phrases and emotional appeals. Worship becomes entertainment, and faith becomes a product to be marketed rather than a practice to be studied and lived. Perhaps most concerning is how television influences our perception of truth. In a print-based culture, truth was established through reasoned argument and evidence. Facts could be debated, questioned, and analyzed. But in a television-based culture, truth is determined by presentation, charisma, and emotional appeal. If something looks and feels true on screen, it is accepted as such. This creates a world where misinformation and superficial narratives thrive, because the medium itself discourages deep scrutiny. Postman does not argue that all television is harmful, but he insists that when television becomes the dominant means of public discourse, it shapes culture in ways we fail to recognize. Entertainment becomes the standard against which everything is judged. Even the most serious matters, politics, religion, education, are subjected to the demands of entertainment value rather than substance. As a result, we become passive consumers rather than active thinkers, more concerned with being amused than being informed. Looking at today's media landscape, Postman's warnings seem eerily prescient. The internet and social media have taken the dynamics of television and amplified them. Platforms like Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram reward brevity, sensationalism, and emotional appeal over reasoned discussion. News is consumed in headlines, debates are reduced to soundbites, and misinformation spreads rapidly because it is engaging. Political campaigns are now social media-driven performances, where candidates must be as entertaining as they are persuasive. So what can be done? Postman does not offer an easy solution, but he suggests that awareness is the first step. Understanding that the medium shapes the message allows us to be more critical consumers of media. While we cannot return to a purely print-based culture, we can make conscious efforts to prioritize depth over distraction. We can choose to read more, engage in longer discussions, and resist the urge to consume only what is entertaining. The responsibility ultimately falls on individuals to reclaim thoughtful discourse in a world that increasingly discourages it. In the end, amusing ourselves to death is not just a critique of television, it is a call to resist the forces that reduce public discourse to mere entertainment. It challenges us to think critically about how we receive information and to recognize the power of media in shaping our perceptions, beliefs, and ultimately, our society.